check one, 2, 3. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. My returning guest today was on the podcast in 2021 on episode 92. Please welcome back production sound mixer based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, Alex Haralson.
How's it going, Michael? Good to be back.
Great to have you back. We exchange an occasional message here and there, but we've been delayed on getting this thing going. So here we are.
Here we are.
So last time we spoke, you were using a Sound Devices 688 mixer recorder. So what has changed since then?
Well, the last time we spoke, I thought I was still, as far as what I owned, I was getting ready to plunk the money down for an 888. The bag that I was using primarily at that point was still a MixPre 10-2. I still have that bag, and I've got the 888 is my primary. It's loaded with Electro SRCs. It's got an SMQV 941 block IFB transmitter, Sennheiser G3s for hops, Electrosonics R1Bs for IFB receivers, and I've got the PSC RF multi antenna distro in there, and the AudioRoot BGDU battery distribution to power everything except the mixer. The 8 series is a lot more power hungry than its predecessors. So I've got a second smart battery cup that is dedicated straight to the 888, and the Sony L mounts on the back for seamless battery swaps throughout the day. MixPre 10-2 bag, I still grab more than one would think that I do because it's so slim and lightweight, and when I have to be harnessed up all day on certain things, I love to not have to be bogged down with a whole lot of weight and with a bag that sticks off my chest. They're all in K-Tech Stingray bags. The 888's in a Stingray small. The MixPre 10 is in a Stingray Junior X. My MixPre 6, which is usually my sound effects recorder, and I keep that box packed with a whole bunch of specialty mics. I've got a stereo pair for, ORTF and XY spaced pairs. I've got electromagnetic microphones. I've got a hydrophone. I've got an NTSF1 sound field, and mostly use that package for gathering sound effects, ambient tracks, and stuff like that. But it has a dashboard in it with a little AudioRoot battery distributor, and I can slot one SRC in there. It's got an output cable that splits it to TA5F for my Electro IFB transmitters, and the other side for Sennheiser G3 for camera hops. So on days that I just don't want to muck with a whole lot of stuff, and it's just a, sit down interviews or kind of a hectic run and gun documentary situation, just grab the little bag. I did end up building a large Dante-based mix cart. I can tie my 888 into the network switch on the back, and it's got a PIX 270i recorder in it as well, and 2 A10 rack units from Sound Devices that take the SRC slot receivers, and so it'll take up to 16 wireless channels. It's a beast of a cart, but I got it done just in time for the industry to kind of take a nosedive. It's been out on a couple of shows, but I'm hoping to wheel it out a little bit more this year.
Now, did you get a new cart as well?
So I built, I'm a big fan of Blackbird carts, and I think what he's doing, he's got some really cool designs. The first one I bought from him is a Grackle, and that's my bag hybrid mix cart. I can put my 888 bag on there, and it's got a sliding shelf for a mix controller. I can fly an antenna mast off of it. It's a great cart. But when I built the Dante cart out, I added a whole lot of stuff like battery backup, power distro, dual 4K monitors, the A10 racks. I needed rack space, and I needed quite a bit of it. Storage drawers, patch panels on the back. So I went with the Blackbird Nighthawk, which is his big full rack mount cart. And that's what I built into for the Dante cart.
Very nice.
It's a beast. It takes two of us to get it in the van, but I can do it, but risk popping a hernia.
Now, what van are you driving?
I have a 2014 Transit Connect. It's a great production vehicle, and I'm really sad that Ford have discontinued the Transit Connect in the United States. 23, I think, was the last model year. It's been a solid workhorse. I can pack so much gear in that thing. I actually have the 7-seater, so I can fold up 2 rows of extra seating. I can put any combination of gear and extra crew in the van. I can pack a pretty impressive amount of gear. The middle row is a 3-seater bench instead of the captain's chairs. So it folds down 2 and 1. And if I fold up the single seater on the passenger side and keep the 2-seater folded flat, I can pack a cart and a bunch of extra cases and 2 extra people.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been a solid. It's starting to show its age a little bit. I've put some miles on it. Really wish Ford still had that as an offering here in the States, but unfortunately they don't.
The industry kind of took a nosedive, as you mentioned. Let's talk about your experience with that.
Yeah. I came out of 2022. It was a great year. I had a lot of work, and 2023 just turned upside down, and it turned upside down for a lot of us across the country. And it wasn't the union. The union strikes had a lot to do with some of the industry coming to a halt. But even outside of that, everything else they kind of put the brakes on it. And, I think a lot of people were expecting with the writer's strike, a repeat of 2007 when unscripted reality TV just kind of came surging through and took up all the slack. And that didn't happen this time. And it didn't happen because apart from the unions going up on strike and trying to negotiate new contracts, the networks and the streaming platforms had been pouring all sorts of money into generating new content, original content to try to attract all the subscribers in the streaming wars. And all of them kind of collectively realized, wait a minute, this model of doing things is not getting the results we wanted. What do we do? And they all just kind of stopped to regroup and reanalyze. And they weren't buying programming last year. We're buying very little of it. A lot of shows went away or went on indefinite hiatus. The unscripted stuff didn't come surging back in to fill the gaps because the networks just weren't wanting to put money into content at the moment until they figured out what was going on. So it left a big void for a lot of us last year. Knoxville lost a big production hub. HGTV started here in 94. And that campus before that was a big production company that was doing a whole lot of cable TV from the early 80s up until they basically sold the company to Scripps to make it HGTV. Food Network Baking Championships were shot here for a few years. And we wrapped that up in fall of 2022 and kind of knew on the way out the door that was it, that Warner Brothers Discovery was going to shut down that campus and sell off the building and take the cash infusion. There was no other facility in Knoxville that was able to accommodate the shows that were going on there. It was the biggest studio in Knoxville by I may be wrong on this, but I think by 10,000 square feet. And it was the only one, especially of the big studios, that was really, truly insulated from the outside world. A lot of the other studios around here are not very well sound isolated. They're not sound stages. And so those shows went back to Los Angeles, and it kind of left a void here. My other big show was Master Distiller on Discovery. We shot 33 episodes for season 4 in 2022, including a special that we wrapped up in February of last year. Got the call in March that Discovery decided to hang on to 13 of those episodes to run them. They're running actually right now. And production manager called me and said, just want to let you know we're not going into production this year. So we're kind of hoping that one will come back. Fingers crossed. But the networks and the streamers, they're all really scrutinizing what they're buying this year. They want to look at, what's the production budget? What did it cost to make this? How much did we make off of it? How many people are watching it? They're not putting money into programming that is untested and unproven. They're really kind of looking to the shows that have a proven track record. So, who knows what's going to come of 2024.
What other shows canceled for you?
My eggs were pretty much in those two baskets. So when those went away, I worked last year and I did fine. I hit my baseline, was not nearly as good as 2022 was, tallying up all the invoices and the tax forms. Most of what I did last year I did a couple of sizzles, worked on a competition show for a YouTube series for Pigeon Forge Tourism, just a lot of little things here and there. Buddy of mine was working on a show that was shooting a pilot series. They weren't just doing a pilot episode. They were doing a full pilot series. And he couldn't make a week of that. And I filled in for him for a week on that down in Charleston. A lot of stuff that was kind of one-off last year. I mean, it all added up and there was work, just not as much as I wanted.
Yeah. My previous year, 2022 was a good year. 23, not so good. I had some fun projects. I mean,
and that's what I'm hearing across the industry is it's not just me. It's not just you. There are a lot of people kind of still waiting for work to pick up.
Yeah. Talking with some of our LA colleagues, it's like it wasn't happening. It's still not happening. It's just like everybody was expecting things to come back slowly, but it's like really slow.
Yeah. Nickelodeon did bring back Nick News last year, and they came through East Tennessee and shot a couple of days up at the Dollywood theme park. And I got on that. Probably one of the highlight experiences for my year last year for one reason. The last day we shot, we got up early in the morning, got up there before the park opened. And every morning that the park is open, there's a crew every single day that goes out starting at like 4:00 in the morning, and they walk the entirety of every roller coaster, inspecting all the joints, all the nails, all the bolts, making sure everything is good to go for the day. And we were shooting around a roller coaster enthusiast convention that was happening at Dollywood. And a few people had won a raffle to get a walking tour of one of the wooden roller coasters there. And they got to walk up to the top of the lift hill. Can't go any further than that without a harness. But a few people got a morning tour. And so we went along and shot an interview up on the top of the lift hill. And it's amazing because when you're standing on top of Thunderhead, you can see every other roller coaster in the park. And it's, Dollywood's done a really good job with landscaping. And so everything kind of blends in with the mountains. And standing up on top of that roller coaster, you just see these roller coasters kind of popping up and peeking out of the trees and everything. And it doesn't look like a giant concrete jungle from up there, but the view is incredible. And it was a nice kind of cool morning. That's one where the MixPre 6 bag was the go-to. I was not hauling myself up that lift hill at 8:00 in the morning with an 888 bag strapped to my chest, because the access stairs on either side of the track going up to the top of the hill are very narrow, and we're having to like squeeze around each other. And having that, I just strapped that little MixPre 6 bag to my harness, had 2 channels electro wireless on the SRC, and had my boom. We had a host and one guest for the interview. And so that's what I hiked up to the top of the lift hill with. And that was a pretty cool experience. Just, I've never actually been able to walk one of the coasters there. I've never been able to walk a roller coaster before at all. So it's kind of a neat first time experience on that.
Interesting. And I guess the frequencies were clean up there?
Yeah, Knoxville has some noise. Certain parts more than others. Block 21 here is kind of useless. Sevierville is fairly open. There's a lot of wireless on park with the different theaters and performance venues. When the park is in operation, you got to be kind of careful, depending on how close you are to the theaters. But on a day when the park is closed down, it's pretty wide open. But during, we were shooting when the park was open the days prior to that, and had no problem finding something that was open.
All right. Yeah, I saw some pictures online of you with Dolly, that icon.
Yeah. here's the thing. If you live in East Tennessee and you work in the industry, eventually it will come around. Somebody will ask you to work on something with Dolly. And she is the best. She's a consummate professional. That was actually the finale episode of that YouTube series that we worked on. And she came in to help announce or reveal who won the competition. We shot most of it in the summer and came back in November when they could get her on the schedule to do the big reveal. Yeah, that was a fun day. We were just there in the morning. We were wrapped up by lunch. In fact, the crew went out and got lunch at a restaurant nearby in Sevierville afterwards. It was kind of an early morning, but it was a fun one.
Well, I was checking out some of your other projects you worked on since we last spoke, and there was biography, WWE Legends.
So the interview for this WWE, WWF documentary was with Ricky Steamboat. And they were interviewing him it was kind of a history of they can't call it the WWF anymore after the whole World Wildlife Foundation thing happened. But this guy was back in the days of the WWF before it was WWE. Back in the days of Hulk Hogan and Captain Lou Albano. And those of us who were around in the 80s remember well. He came into Knoxville and the producer had a hotel room, a suite, and we set it up in the living room of the hotel suite. Just did an interview it was like a, 3 or 4 hour day. Those little interview days are kind of gravy. I like them because you can just kind of sit. They're sort of low impact days. You're not having to be running around chasing people, and there's air conditioning. The older I get, the more I value mixing from a desk or a cart. I've kind of stopped working on narrative without a boom op. I mean, occasionally a little short film will come up. A friend of mine, you do a favor for a friend and okay, fine, I'll do it out of a bag. But there is something about having that whole part of it taken off your plate, help with miking people up. There's a guy here in town, same guy who lives right down the street. He's my go-to boom op, and I'll call him as utility on stuff like that finale episode for that Pigeon Forge show with Dolly. We had a lot of people. I had all 16 channels running in the cart. Yeah. And really needed help. I needed to be able to mix and not fool with juggling transmitter packs as people were coming in and out of the room. And that's when having a utility is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about when you have 16 channels and a mic's scratching and rubbing and, how are you guys working through that?
Especially when you have to juggle in a situation like that show, there were more people coming through than we had mic channels available. And we didn't really need everybody mic'd when they all came back into the room at the end. So it's really about numbering your packs so you know how to group them and get them on, because we had families and they were all actually color-coded by T-shirt. Yeah, I mean, you're just pulling off the adhesive and putting new ones on. Moleskin will restick fairly decently to fabric if you do a moleskin sandwich with the Ursa mini mounts, which we were using a bit too. Those stick once really well, but once you pull them off to reposition, you've got to put a new sticky on them. So, I mean, a lot of it's just about labeling everything, keeping track of what goes where and on whom. And one of the things I love about the Sound Devices 8 series is the dedicated comms round trip that's built in. And I've got the remote audio modded 7506 headphones with the condenser boom mic that's terminated in TA5F, and you plug that in the side of the 8 series. And I've got a separate IFB transmitter that goes to Jerry, whether he's booming or utility for me. And I can push to talk straight to him. I route my slate mic to him. If he's booming, I feed his boom track pre-fade. And then he hears his mic plus me. And then he wears a Sennheiser G3 transmitter with a surveillance push to talk mic wired for Sennheiser. Remote audio does those as well. I've got them wired for Electro too. And there's a comms return, and you plug the receiver right into the comms return. And he and I have completely private conversations. There was a conversation recently on one of the Sound Mixer Facebook groups about this, and actually talking about do you have your boom op just talk to you through the boom mic? And, it was done that way for a very long time. And it's fine. You can do it that way. You just have to be very judicious about what is said. And when that microphone is potted up and broadcasting to anybody who's got ears on. So, Jerry and I have worked that way before, and I've had code words when somebody else hopped on to headphones. It was always shielded as hospitality. It was like, hey, Jerry, we've got a guest on comms right now, say hi to Kelly, and, oh, hey, Kelly. And, we made it a friendly welcome, but that was also code for somebody else is listening. It's something about having that completely private communications, two-way communication system, and it's completely integrated into the mixer. Makes it a lot easier to talk back and forth, troubleshoot things, relay messages that need to be relayed to set, for him to alert me of things that are happening out there without broadcasting it to everybody else. I'm much more comfortable with that. It can be done the old school way, but I've been spoiled.
No, that's good. Yeah. Who was it? I think there was it an interview with Simon Hayes? I think he was talking about when he worked on Prometheus with Ridley Scott. And I guess between takes, the boom op would be talking to Simon, and I guess they were going through the boom. And I think Ridley finally said, look, you guys are doing a great job. The audio sounding good, but this banter between takes is driving me crazy. And that's when Simon Hayes ended up, going with a separate system. And, but I thought that's good. That's a good setup.
Yeah. And on my IFB transmitters, I've got an SMQV with a battery eliminator on my 888 bag and an SMV with a battery eliminator on the MixPre 10 bag. I'll just yank the extra one off the MixPre 10 bag when I'm on the mix cart, dial in a separate channel for Jerry, give him an R1B. And it's not just less annoying for people who have ears on, but it really does allow me to communicate in more detail, and he communicates in more detail with me. We don't have to worry about people overhearing us trying to troubleshoot stuff. Like, problem solving is a big part of the job. But on the outside, you really just want people to see you solving the problem, not talking about how to solve the problem. Like, they really don't need to be aware about it until you jump in to fix it. And I think that's the other benefit to having the private comms.
Now, you did a doc about the world's most powerful supercomputer.
So Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is where half of the Manhattan Project took place. The other half of it was out in Los Alamos, but that's where they designed and built the nuclear bombs during World War II. That place has just grown and grown and grown over the decades. And Oak Ridge National Labs have a lot of really cool things going on over there. And one of the things that they have is Frontier, which is currently the #1 supercomputer in the world, which replaced another. They've had that record before with previous iterations of their supercomputers. But this was a documentary that came out of France, and they'd been traveling all over, and they're doing a full history of human calculation, going all the way back to early human beings carving notches in bones to keep track of things, all the way up to where we are now and what do we think the future holds. And so this was kind of the culmination of it. This is the state of things now and where we're going from here. So they came through and shot for a day at Oak Ridge, interviewing a couple of people up there. And we got to actually go into the server room at Frontier and walk around for like 45 minutes, which was really, really amazing and intense. There's like 90,000, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but it's like 90,000 GPUs and 45,000 computers that are all in these just racks upon racks upon racks of computers that are all networked together to create this one supercomputer. And it was cool to watch because there are people who just come in and out all day. Like, you'll see them just periodically come through with this specialized lift cart, and they'll open the back of a rack and they'll pull out one of the whole processing units and wheel it back to a workbench. And a few minutes later, they'll come back and they'll slot it right back in the rack, because these computers, they run all day, all night. They crank, and power supplies and CPUs just eventually give out. I mean, those are the things any IT department will be fixing in a corporate scenario, right? But imagine having 45,000 of them running, and there's so much redundancy. They can pull one of those out and go fix it and be back in 5-10 minutes, pop it back in, and the computer never really skips a beat on it. But yeah, walking around that room for 45 minutes or so, watching things, listening to the hum in the room is really loud. We didn't shoot really any interviews in there. That was mostly for B-roll, but I got to tag along with that, so that was fun.
Do you run any noise reduction plugins on your mixers?
I do not. One, I just haven't come around to deciding to spend the money on it, but I might eventually. They're handy, but they're really useful for stuff that is super tight turnaround where they're not going to be going into audio post. And sure, you can bake in the noise reduction because it's going to get turned right back around into the edit and spit out in a matter of hours. It's good for reference so people can kind of hear like how this can be cleaned up. But unless you're on a really tight edit deadline, or there's going to be no audio post on what you're doing, yeah, it's great, but you only want it on a mix track, not on your ISO, so that post can go back to the raw source material and really have control over it.
You also worked on a History's Greatest Escapes with Morgan Freeman?
Yeah, History's Great Escapes. Went down to Natchez, Mississippi, and spent 4 weeks down there on the recreations unit. They shot the talent stand-ups before I got down there, and it was in the middle of production for the host wraps that they called me. A friend of mine was ADing on that project, and they had decided they wanted a sound mixer to come down and be part of the recreation unit to gather basically a sound effects library for the show as they were shooting these recreations. And so I got called. I went down there and spent 4 weeks down in Mississippi, just recording all sorts of whatever I could get, footsteps, scrapes, clanks. We shot some footage in the old Adams County Courthouse, which was the original county jail, with the gallows. That was nice. And a lot of old creaky cell doors and the manual levers that lock and unlock the cell blocks. And the last day we were there, everybody else was packing out, and I went down to the props master and I grabbed a couple of things, said, "Hey, can I borrow a couple of these props?" One of them was a billy club that they had for the guard. And I said, I'm just going to go up there. Now that the building's clear, they were shooting outside and it was MOS. They didn't need me for what they were doing. And I said, I'm just going to go in and run around. I talked to the director, and he was like, yeah, totally, go do that. And so I just ran around this old circa late 1800s built prison, just banging on cell bars and creaking doors and clanking whatever I could find. So we had several locations throughout, and I recorded sound during the recreation scenes just to get in case they wanted anything. But those recreation scenes don't often use much diegetic sound at all. I think they used a little of what I recorded, but it was fun just being able to really be a sound effects capturing sound mixer for the time I was down there. That was fun.
That's cool. Yeah, the times that I've had chances to record sound effects in spaces that, even if they don't use them, I mean, of course you want them to, but it's nice for your collection. But yeah, to have that and have that moment to be able to walk around and do that kind of stuff, it is nice. When I worked on a documentary recently. Well, I've been doing quite a few docs lately, and I love the doc experience. I love the real story. We did a doc for a guy, it's called No Leg Power. And he was a promising high school athlete, and he got shot in a drive-by, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And we just kind of told his story, and we interviewed his parents, his sister, and it was a fascinating, story. And this guy, he had some tough times, and he went through a lot of ordeal, and he discovered CrossFit, and he started exercising again and doing these different things. And I don't know where it's all going to go, but it was really an amazing story. And I even told him when I was miking him up, I said, dude, you have an amazing story. I said, people need to hear this. And I said, I don't know if you're writing a book or but you should. I mean, if you want to, I didn't know if he was speaking with, high school kids or whatever, but I was like, I don't know if you are doing that, but I mean, you could make a career out of this. You could travel the country and speak to kids and, maybe save some lives. And anyway, I get excited about that stuff sometimes. And I was telling him about it, and he just seemed, pumped, and the family loved the final. It was pretty cool. So I do enjoy that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. I mean, those are the things that really kind of help validate the career choice, a lot of what we do might just be a paycheck, but when you get on stuff like that and you really you see the value and the impact, those are the things for me that really kind of make me feel good about doing what I do.
Yeah. I've done some medical docs too, and we work with this lady, and she's 77 years young, basically. She had some carotid artery blockage, and there's this new procedure. It's called TCAR, and it's basically they make a small incision, because I guess before, when you have carotid artery surgery, they just go from the ear all the way down and just fillet that thing open and clear it out and put it back together. But there's nerve damage and numbness and all sorts of things that happen. But now they make a little hole, and they have this, they basically bypass the blood flow through a filter. So it was fascinating to kind of hear this project. So while they're doing the process, putting in some stents or whatever, they're bypassing it so you don't, have a piece of plaque or whatever that goes to your brain or something. But this lady was living life to the fullest. She's doing all these things. And I was like, I want to be like you when I'm 77 years old. She had all these activities in her retirement community, and yeah, it was for a product. It was for a company, but it still was fun to hear her story and hear how she's living life, and this procedure helped her live that more fulfilling life. So anyway, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I worked on a Netflix documentary a couple of years ago that came through. There was a meatpacking plant. I mean, it's still there in a little town outside of Knoxville called Bean Station. It's another county or so over. And it was raided by the feds, by INS a few years ago. And the documentary kind of looked at the human toll on the people affected by the raid and the arrests and the deportations, like the families that were left behind. And it was really interesting to see, the fuller human impact outside of just the INS response and just the plant getting raided, to see, all of the things that came out of that, and kind of meet some of the people who were impacted by that and not in a positive way. I love working on documentaries for that reason. I love to, human stories. Again, we need that human connection.
It's true. Well, the same production company that hired me for this doc I just talked about, they hired me a couple years ago for another doc, and it was for people with Parkinson's that have tremors, and they use sound waves to stimulate the brain, which causes the tremors to go away. And the lady was explaining that, there's tremors that we do see with Parkinson's, and then there's tremors we don't see that are internal. And so she couldn't read. There were so many things that she was struggling with. She was thinking about ending it. She said, I can't live like this. And so she had these procedures, and one side, the tremor went away. And I was like, wow. And then I heard just 6 months ago, she had the other side done, because at one time the FDA only let them do one side. Well, now that she got to do, so now it doesn't cure Parkinson's, but it helps with the tremors. But it was funny because this crew came from San Francisco. They hired me. The location, when I got the address, was 5 minutes from my house. And I knew the lady. I knew the husband and wife where we went to film. This is the craziest thing. So, we go and there she goes, hi, hi, Michael, when I show up, and here I am. So I worked 2 or 3 days with them, and we did the interview, but I know these people. So anyway, that was even more special, but we did some sit down interviews. She she rides horses. So it showed her taking care of this, her horse and then riding. And I had the SMDWBs on there. And so I just hit record. They went off for a ride somewhere, and so it was kind of fun. But yeah, it's first of all, a small world. And then it was a very another moving experience. Yeah, it's for a medical procedure, but it still it's real, it's somebody's real experience. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get to do as much of the documentary stuff as I really want to. I just got back in town last night from a couple of interview days on a reality show. And I mean, reality is what it is. Like, it was interview days. We were in the same room for 2 days. So it was really kind of low impact, really chill, but it's a reality show. I love documentary and I love narrative. And, so the city of Knoxville launched a new film festival last year called Film Fest Knox. And, we have a really good, very active film office here in town. The guy who directs it, Kurt, is very proactive about supporting the local production community, the professionals working in the industry, and trying to, his part of his job is to attract films to shoot in the Knox County area and to connect them to crew and locations and resources, catering, all the things. His office is part of the city of Knoxville's visitor center, Visit Knox, and they started a new film festival last year that had a local element to it. They were bringing in a lot of really cool stuff nationally, internationally, some vintage films that were brought back. Come to Knoxville this coming November, grab a hotel room for, Thursday through Sunday. It's a really well run event, and they're doing it again. But the local element of it had several teams making a short film that was kind of a standalone short film that was also a pitch to try to develop into a feature. And there was a competition for some cash prizes and some mentorship and some resources that would open up. And so there were a lot of teams that jumped in on that, and some really talented directors in town who came up on their short films. And those are, they're not full budget films, but they're really fun projects to work on. Back to Oak Ridge, I worked on one for the elevator pitch that was about... It takes place during the Manhattan Project in Oak Ridge, a short film called Secret City. You can find a link on my website to watch it. Was able to get some budget to bring Jerry in as my boom op. And it was only 4 actors, and we shot for 3 days out on a cattle ranch on the outskirts of Knoxville. Had a lot of fun with that one. What's cool about that too is started getting back into, on and off over the years, I've done sound design and audio post. And so after the film fest, the director went back and re-edited a director's cut and called me and was like, "Hey, can you actually do like sound design and a post mix on this?" And it's not often I play both sides of the coin on the same project. So it was kind of fun to take the short film that I had done location sound on and bring it in here and actually do a mix and create some sound effects and do some light Foley and give it the real full audio post workup. And I'm in the middle of a project right now on another one. I didn't do the location sound on it, but again, the director did a director's cut after the festival and wants full sound design on it. And we're doing some fun stuff with that too. So it's been fun to get back into the post world a little bit. It's kind of refreshing to sit here in the Pro Tools suite and just kind of create and mix and work on on narrative in the post world.
That is true. I saw a social media post where you were on board a Citation 2 corporate jet. What was that about?
So that was the shoot down in Charleston, that pilot series. And we were working with a pilot down in Charleston, and we ended up hopping on that Citation and flying up to Roanoke, Virginia from Charleston, which is like only an hour by jet, and shooting some interviews and some B-roll at the airport up there, and then hopping back on that plane that evening and turning right back around and flying back to Johns Island. We were at the executive airport outside of Charleston, not the main Charleston airport. Yeah, that was fun. And that plane is tight quarters, And I was kind of scrunched in that seat with my bag, ran a cable up to the cockpit and had a hard line tied into the comm system so that we could hear the pilot and the son of the guy who was kind of featured in this show also flies, to hear their chatter throughout. They were shooting B-roll through the whole flight. And so I just ran a hard line off the comm system and sat back in the very back of the plane with my bag and just rolled on it the whole time. And, it's those Citation 2s are not spacious. It's kind of a flying sardine can, but I mean, they're nice. They're really nice jets, but there's no standing room.
I see. When you're plugging into the comm system, is that a special connection?
It is. Comm systems in airplanes and helicopters, there are a couple of different ways, a couple of different connections that are available. This one, I think, is, if I'm not mistaken, the same connection that's used in NASCAR comm systems. It's a modified 1/4 inch, not a tip ring sleeve. It's tip ring or tip ring sleeve. Companies like Remote Audio, they offer adapters so you can plug in and adapt the audio output to XLR. That way you run it straight back to your mixer and hardline in. Helicopters have a different connection, and I can't remember what that one is. But those comm systems do have very different connections, and you need to have an adapter for it. But the adapters are not hard to find.
Well, that sounds like a fun trip, though.
Yeah, it was a great trip. This is not related to the tech nerd side of production in any way, shape, or form, but there was courtesy breakfast every day. They had lunch for us. They usually had dinner for us as well. I didn't touch my per diem the whole week I was there. But I also didn't have time to get into Charleston and really play because we were working. Every day was work day and we were there. They had an Airbnb for us and get back there. And it's just kind of like, well, I'm wiped. I'm going to turn in for the night. But 3 meals a day provided. So Friday was the last day. We wrapped around 2-3 o'clock. Saturday was the travel day. So I got back to the Airbnb and I went through and I broke down my gear, got everything packed back up in the cases, and decided I'm going into downtown Charleston tonight. And this is one of my favorite places to be. I love food, and Charleston is a great place if you love food. And I told myself I was going to blow my entire week's per diem at the Raw Bar, and mission accomplished. One sitting, I went through all 5 days of go big or go home, baby.
That's right. You want to talk about your new studio?
Yeah, I built out my Pro Tools suite. I've had the Pro Tools system running for years, but I've been cramped in a small room, a little 8x9 box. So I had a chance to build out a bigger space and really have a proper room to mix. It's big enough to have clients. I've got enough space to bring in small acoustic groups, singer-songwriter, soloist duos, do 3 or 4 musicians in here. It was not built as a recording studio. It was built as a mix room, but it has space to be able to record. But it's nice to be able to really spread out and not feel like all my other stuff is stacked up kind of up the walls and around behind me and feel really claustrophobic. I've got room to spread out. I have another room where I keep all of my gear organized. It's great because now I've started kind of reaching out again to pull in some post work again, with production kind of here and there. This is a fickle industry, and I don't think anybody gets into this industry as a freelancer not understanding that it can be feast or famine. And if you do get into this as a freelancer not understanding that it can be feast or famine, you're going to be in for a pretty shocking reality check. But with the way the industry has gone the last year or so, it was a little encouragement to try to diversify the income base a little bit and try to monetize other resources that I had sitting around and experiences that I had. I'm not new to sound design and audio post. So it's nice to be able to have a space that is my space that's not merged into my personal living space. My wife and I have our space that clients don't cross through.
Yeah.
And I've got my studio. But yeah, trying to get back into doing a bit more sound design audio post to fill in the gaps and, hoping that next big location sound job comes through sometime soon.
All right, this has been great. I want to say a big thanks to Alex Haralson for being on the podcast again.
Thanks, Michael, for having me again.
I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions, send an email to locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. The Location Sound Podcast is part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.